Thank you for sticking with us. Mine is going to be probably a little bit shorter, so we should be able to hopefully get back on track. I wanted to talk really about the relationship between load and injury, and really how we can use load to manage injury risk. So I'm going to start with a question. So we've got two athletes here, which I just want you to have a think about which of these two athletes is more likely to get injured. So we've got athlete 1, runs 50 miles a week, does 3 marathons a year, alongside multiple short races. And we have athlete 2, who's the occasional runner, 0 to 15 miles per week, just does the occasional race from now and then. So I want you to think, who out of those two, who is more likely to get an injury in the sort of coming year? And we'll come back to that. So the principle that underpins what we're going to talk about is mechanotransduction, which is the scientific name for adaptation. So to put it really simply from a GCSE physics, if we have a spring and we attach a load to it, we get a change in load as there's stress through the spring. The change or the response will be determined by how much load is applied to the spring amongst how strong the spring is. So I don't know if people can see that number. Can anyone work out what W should be there? Is anyone? I think it's 40, but I don't know. I'm helping my children with their physics at the moment. Okay, and the human body is the same as the spring. If we apply a physical stress to it, we will get an adaptation effect. So whether that be our systems, our respiratory system, or our cardiovascular system, neuromuscular system, if we apply a stress to those systems, we will get an effect. Or our body tissue, our body is made up of cells, whether it be bone or cartilage or tendon, muscle. If we apply a stimulus, a physical load to that tissue, we will expect to see a response from it. So, well, first thing is, how do we measure load as a runner? So I say often to my patients, it's about the DIF, the diff, which is your duration of your run, which is obvious how long you run for or how far you would run. The intensity is related to speed primarily, but that may also be the surface if you're up and downhill, and we would measure that by perceived exertion. And the frequency, so how frequently will you run? How many sessions per week or per day, in fact, may you run? And if we get those things right, we will get what this graph will show, this positive adaptation. So on the y-axis here is our capacity, x-axis is over a period of time. And so if we start here at our base level and we apply a stimulus, so we go for a run, in that immediate period after we've finished the run, when we've finished the load, we'll be tired, we'll be fatigued, our systems will be fatigued, and our tissue will be just depleted at that particular point. So we know how it feels after you finish doing a training session. Now, the good thing is if we allow enough recovery time, we eat well, sleep well, hydrate, we will recover. And then we'll recover not only back to our base level, but we'll actually go on and get this, we call it compensation, super compensation, where we will become better than we were before the run. Our systems will be better, our tissue will be stronger as a result of doing that run. And then if we repeat that cycle again, so we add another stimulus here, again, we get that immediate depletion of our system, of our tissue. But again, as long as we then apply enough rest time, enough recovery time, we will get that increase in capacity again. And that's the principle of training. By going through this cycle of train, recover, we get fitter, we get stronger, and our tissue becomes stronger as a result of that. Now, unfortunately, the opposite can also happen. If we get that cycle wrong, too much, too soon, we can then start to have the opposite effect on tissue. So not only is the training not effective, it can actually weaken our tissue and affect our response. So again, if we start at this baseline level here, we apply a load, running in this example, we finish our session, we're depleted, we're tired, we start to recover, but before we can get to that point where we've fully recovered and we've gone to that supercompensation part, we've applied another load here. So we've not yet got back to our baseline, and then we apply another load, we get that depletion again, we've dropped a little bit lower than what we did previously. And then if we repeat that mistake again and again, we'll blunten our training effect, but more importantly, we'll start to deplete the tissue, bone, which will lead to bone stress injury, tendon, which will lead to Achilles tendinopathy or plantar fasciopathy, those type of things. And the problem with a lot of these things is it's not until we reach a certain level that actually we'll get symptoms. So make that mistake once or twice, no symptoms because our body is resilient enough to resolve it. And it can be resolved by allowing enough recovery here or here. But if we don't allow that recovery, we deplete, and that's where injury, or what we would term overuse injuries, will kick in. So what we're looking at doing by training is developing what we call our physiological envelope. And that's our capacity, that's our robustness, our ability to absorb high forces by having completed those activities before, to build up our resilience. So in a very basic graph here, if we look at someone who does, sorry, I know it's quite hard to read, but that's 30 kilometers a week. So someone who's a sort of a mid-runner, they're able to manage 30 kilometers a week fairly consistently. If you continue to do that, you'll be in a safe zone. You'll probably plateau at 30 kilometers a week. Your physiology will plateau at that level, but you're in a safe zone where your risk of injury is relatively low. If we go to, or that runner goes to 40 kilometers a week, it starts to stretch them a little bit. It's a bit beyond what their normal capacity is, but it's manageable, just about, or just over the manageable, becomes an overload. But as long as they have enough recovery in place and they do the right things in place, they'll get that super compensation that we talk about. So they'll expand their physiological envelope to be able to withstand 40 kilometers a week. The problem is that runner goes from 30 to 50, which is a big transition very quickly. That's when you're more likely to run into injury because you're getting into that risk of failure. And so from a training point of view, we look at something called acute chronic workload. So this is a concept that's crept in over the last few years in terms of dealing with mostly professional sports people, but it's equally applicable all the way down. So our acute chronic workload, our chronic workload is the average that we've done over the last 4 weeks. So our weekly average over 4 weeks, and our acute workload is what we've done the last week. So if we're doing 40 kilometers a week for the previous 4 weeks and we've stuck at 40 kilometers, that's a 1.0 ratio. If we're doing more than 40, then obviously that ratio will go up that way. So 1.0, as we can see, is this very sort of safe area that we've talked about before. What we ideally want is that change where we're just gradually increasing. So if we increase that ratio to 1.2, 1.3, 1.4, we're still in a relatively low risk issue here, but we're going to start to get some adaptation, some positive adaptation. If we go high, 1.5 plus, then we're in danger of trying to do too much too soon, and that's when we expose the injury risk. So that's that side of the graph. I think what can sometimes be missed is this side of the graph as well. So if we actually are doing less per week, we know that training is a very reversible stimulus for our body. So as soon as we reduce our training, we will be effectively deconditioning. Now, if we do that over a long enough period of time, then we will see a physiological change in our adaptation. And so if we then reduce that to below 1 and certainly below 0.5, we start to see a reverse of the positive effects that we previously have been with training. And then that has a knock-on effect on our physiological envelope. So we become less robust, less able to tolerate forces. So with the graph here, we're just seeing here, we've got what we started with, a manageable, a high level of load that we're able to sort of tolerate, running an hour or jumping, whatever that may be. And then we have an injury where we're forced to stop training for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, whatever that length of time is. And that area under the graph that was manageable is now much smaller. We've reduced our envelope. And so things that were comfortable before are now no longer comfortable. So running for 1 hour was manageable, and actually now it's excessive. So that's something to think about when we're restarting training from an injury or when we're picking up something new that we haven't done before. So if we come back to that question that we asked at the beginning, which athlete is more likely to be injured? Well, the obvious answer is it depends. But we can sort of say this athlete one, sort of probably maybe counterintuitive to some people who were sort of naive to this, would think that athlete one is more prone to injury because they're exposing themselves to high mileage, more likely to be injured. But we can make a good argument for what we've just talked about, that athlete, by developing training over weeks, months, years, has developed a high physiological envelope, a degree of robustness, so they're much less likely to get injured. Whereas runner two, occasional, would probably have periods where they don't run at all, and then they might do 15 miles a week, and then they're exposing themselves to a race. We could make an argument that that's where injury is more likely to happen. So a lot of my background is working with professional football players, and we see that when we're trying to sign a player to play for the club, you do a medical, a pre-signing medical, and we do scans and all sorts of things, spend a lot of money on those things. But the biggest thing that we will look at is their training and playing history, which anyone can do easily. And the players who play 40, 50 games a year, year in, year out, show to us already that they've got a high level of ability to withstand forces, and they're much less likely to get injured than players who are in and out and haven't been exposed to those number of games. And it's the same with what we're talking about with runners. So really, in conclusion, too much too soon is certainly a problem, but too little for too long is equally a problem. And so that would occur with someone who's new to the sport or someone who's been injured for a period of time. And really, if we can get that dosage correct, so that dosage of running, not only will it help with our progression of our fitness, so it help us to develop physically, but it also reduces that risk of injury and gives us the sort of best chance of staying fit. Okay, 9 o'clock, exactly, thank you.